Chapter 14. Playing Games, or Winner Loses All. What will help you most, said Heron, as he started their next session, is to realize the connection between the games people play and their life positions. You do remember life positions, don't you, Toad? Very clearly, said Toad, and he went to the flip chart that was hanging on the wall, rifled through the pages, and opened it at Heron's diagram of the previous week. Good, said Heron. In that diagram you can clearly see the 4 life positions, with one position represented in each of the quadrants. What I propose we do is look at each position in turn and try to understand the kind of people that are likely to play. What do you think of this approach? Yes, that's fine by me, answered Toad. Can I choose which life position we start with? Of course, said Heron. Which one will you choose? Toad turned to a fresh sheet of paper and wrote, I'm not okay, you're okay. Then he said to Heron, Now what does that really mean? It means, said Heron, that it is the behavioural attitude of someone who thinks poorly of himself and feels other people are better than he is. Better at what? Better at almost anything, replied Heron. People who have low self-esteem usually feel that not only has life dealt them a poor hand, but it has also dealt other people a better one. In general terms, people in this position feel that they are life's victims, and so they play games which result in them being victimized. Like what? asked Toad. I'm so unlucky, replied Heron. Beg pardon, said Toad in some surprise. It's the name of the game. It's played by people who believe that they are unlucky, and who will readily supply you with a long list of all the unlucky things that have happened to them. For instance, some people will blame their misfortune on the house they are living in, or on its geographical position, or supposed ley lines, and just think of all the superstitions that concern bad luck, like breaking a mirror or spilling salt. But we can be unlucky, can't we? For instance, I have never won a raffle in my life, and I don't suppose I ever shall. I'm talking about something much more serious, answered Heron. I'm talking about people who go out of their way to select and remember the sad and unhappy events, and forget and discount the good times. That seems a very depressing way to lead your life, said Toad. That's a very observant remark, Heron responded, because people who play this game do get depressed. They feel that bad forces are affecting their lives, which they can't control, and this makes them feel anxious and inadequate. What about another game? Asked Toad after a pause. Plom, answered Heron. Oh, I remember that one, Toad said quickly. It means poor little old me. At one of our sessions you accused me of playing it. Yes, I did mention it before, but I don't think I accused you of playing it, Heron said. My aim is not to accuse you, but to help you recognize the games you are playing, so that you can give them up. Do you really think I play this game? Toad asked. Well, what do you think? Responded Heron. Certainly at the start of our sessions you were suffering from an acute attack of self-pity, wouldn't you say? Yes, you're quite right. I did feel that everyone was picking on me, especially when I first returned home after my adventures. I certainly felt very depressed and inadequate then. I've always wanted people to love me no matter what I do. Now that's another game, said Heron. What is? Love me no matter what I do. Some people make messes or get into scrapes just to see how far they can go before someone stops forgiving them or rejects them. There you are, they say. That proves that I really am that bad or that stupid. These games seem very dangerous to me, said Toad. Because if someone you love or respect gives up on you, you certainly would feel miserable and all on your own. I agree, said Heron. You are beginning to realize how dangerous these games can be. They can be seriously damaging to your health. There was a pause as they both sat quietly in deep thought. After a while, Heron asked, Toad, what do you think is the most extreme behaviour that a person who feels not okay can take? Toad said in a quiet voice, Suicide, I suppose. Yes, said Heron. Now, of course, I'm not saying that everyone who feels not okay is going to kill himself, but did you know that suicide is one of the major causes of death in young men in England? No, I didn't know that, Toad replied, but I can believe it. I have been in that situation. It is very desolate and frightening. He sat quietly as he remembered how close he had once come to the abyss. After a while, Heron spoke. What ego states do you think people are in when they play these victim games? Sad child, I should think, replied Toad. Then with more vigour he said, No, I shall be more positive. It's definitely the sad child state. I can speak from experience. I know. And again he was silent. Shall we look at another of the life positions? Asked Heron after a while. And he wrote, I'm okay, you're not okay. Do you understand what this position means, Toad? I think so, said Toad. It must describe someone who thinks that he or she is better than other people. So I suppose they will play games to reinforce this. Is that right?" "Yes, it certainly is," answered Heron. "These are usually games where the player can be angry, or at least critical or judgmental. People in this psychological position often get into positions of power and authority, and then they can play their game." He wrote on the flip sheet, "NIGYYSOB. "What on earth is that?" asked Toad. "It's the initial letters of the name of the game. They stand for, 'Now I've got you, you son of a bitch.'" "That's an ugly-sounding game," said Toad, who could be quite fastidious about the proper use of English. "Yes," answered Heron, "and it's an ugly game to play." "So what happens?" Toad asked. "Well," said Heron, "this game is frequently played at work. First of all, someone makes a mistake, which, as you can imagine, often happens. The boss then notices it, calls in the erring subordinate, and proceeds to give him or her a dressing down, shouting and raving at them, out of all proportion to the offence committed. As you can see, this game allows the angry person to get angry, apparently justifiably, thus confirming the "I'm okay, you're not okay" life position. They have the proof that other people are essentially incompetent and unreliable, and second, that it is their duty to chastise and punish them. Otherwise, they say, they will think they can get away with it. "Phew," exclaimed Toad. "I can sympathize with anyone who has been on the receiving end of that game. It reminds me all too clearly of my father when I was little, and not so little. I can see now that NIGYYSOB was one of his favourite games." "Unfortunately, this game seems to be on the increase, especially in organizations," replied the Heron. "It's all too easy for people in authority to act out their fantasy of the punishing parent and treat their staff like naughty children. The papers seem to be full of cases of bullying. In your case, of course, you had no one to whom you could appeal. There are other games played from the 'I'm okay, you're not okay' position which you may recognize," continued the Heron, "such as 'Why do you always let me down?'" "Good heavens," said Toad. "That's father again. He was always saying that." "Or playing it," Heron interjected. "Yes," answered Toad. "He played it regularly with me. It always worked. I ended up feeling useless or guilty, and he, I suppose, was confirmed in his belief that I was useless, and that he was a superior being. Do you think that's right, Heron?" "I'm afraid so," Heron replied. "It will have confirmed his feelings of moral superiority, and it is often associated with another game. How dare you?" "It seems as if people in this life position always need to attack and condemn," said Toad. "You have got it exactly," said Heron. "These are the persecutors who use any opportunity to create situations where they can judge and punish others. It is interesting to wonder just what are their own internal persecutors that lead to this behavior." After a pause, he asked, "What do you think is the most extreme behavior that a person who feels 'I'm okay, you're not okay' can take?" Toad paused for a moment and then said, "Murder, I suppose." "Yes," replied Heron. "Fortunately, few people go that far, but you will hear people say about a boss at work, 'It's murder working for him,' and they mean it." "So presumably people in this position play games from the parent state," mused Toad. "And always from their critical parent," added Heron. "These people are quick to criticize, anxious to get angry, and want to judge others by impossible standards. Of course, sometimes they may make a pretense of being in their nurturing parent when they say things like, 'This hurts me more than it hurts you,' or 'I'm doing this for your own good.' But most of us can recognize hypocrisy when we hear it. But there is another interesting thing about people in this psychological position," continued Heron. "They rarely, if ever, get depressed." "Why is that?" asked Toad in some surprise. "Because anger is such a good defense against depressive thoughts," answered Heron. "Angry people never feel guilty, because they always blame others. They defend themselves by projecting their internal fears outwards onto others, so they can be angry with them instead of themselves." Toad looked puzzled, so Heron said, "Let me give you an illustration of what I mean. Suppose that someone in the 'I'm okay, you're not okay' position has ordered a taxi which fails to arrive. When this happens, how will he feel?" "He will probably feel very angry," Toad answered. "I can imagine Badger getting in quite a rage and playing NIGYYSOB with the taxi firm over the phone." "Exactly," said Heron. "But now imagine a similar situation, only this time the person is in the 'I'm not okay, you're okay' position. How will he feel?" Toad considered this new situation and didn't like what he saw. "He won't get angry," he answered. "That's for sure. But after that I don't know what he would do." Heron then said, "Imagine it is you, Toad, in that situation. There you are, waiting for a taxi which hasn't arrived. How will you feel?" Toad thought for a while and then said, "I suppose I will start to feel sad and wonder why the driver has forgotten me. I might think that he has many other important calls, and that I'm at the bottom of the list." Then after a pause he said, "I might even blame myself and think that maybe I hadn't made the arrangements properly. So you can see the difference." "Yes, of course I can," replied Toad with some vehemence. "And what implication am I supposed to draw from that? That I should get angry like Badger and tell people what I think of them and shout and rave? Is that what you think I should do?" He paused and he looked directly at Heron and said, "I suppose you think that I'm not okay, that I'm a complete wimp, is that it?" "No, not at all," answered Heron. "These ideas are not to be used as labels with which to attack or insult people. They are simply ways of trying to understand behaviour, especially your own." "You sound quite defensive," said Toad. "I am not attacking you. Well, I have to say that, at this minute, I'm feeling quite angry with you. I've felt it boiling up for some time, and now I want to let it out." Heron tried not to look surprised, but he was. "You always seem to be getting me to admit my faults and failures," Toad continued, "and yet you never tell me directly what you think of me. All this time you say, 'What do you think, Toad? How do you feel, Toad?' You never tell me what you think of me, and yet you're supposed to be the qualified counsellor, whatever that means, and sometimes you seem just like my father. Well, I think I've had enough." He sat in his chair and confronted Heron directly. There was complete silence. Finally Heron said, "So what are you going to do about it?" Toad almost exploded. "There you go again! More questions! Let me tell you, I've had just about enough of your bloody questions." He looked at Heron as if daring him to speak. He could feel his heart beating strongly, but it wasn't pounding. He realized that, although he was genuinely angry, he was in complete control of himself. He was also aware, without fully understanding it at all, that he had just done something of great significance which somehow involved both Heron and his father. If he were to be honest, a part of him felt frightened at what he had just done. He had not just been rude to Heron. He had taken him on and in some way overthrown him, and somehow this had also involved his father. Suddenly he felt that he no longer needed to play the subservient role. He could assert himself and say what he wanted to say, although he realized that he would have to deal with the new situation this would inevitably cause. For instance, how would he deal with Heron now? "I'm sorry about that," he said eventually. "I'm not apologizing. I've been wanting to say that to you for some time, and that seemed to be the right time. Do you understand?" "I think so," answered Heron. "Do you want absolution?" "No, I don't," said Toad. "I stand by what I said. But I suppose that's the end of our counselling." "I think it is," said Heron. "But on reflection, I would like us to have one more session." "Why is that?" asked Toad. "I really feel that our work is finished now." "Finished, yes, but not completed," Heron replied. "There are two reasons why I think we should meet for a final session. The first is that I would like you to have the opportunity to review what you have learnt here, and what you intend to do about it. In other words, what changes you intend to make." "Yes, I can agree to that," said Toad. "And the second reason?" "The second reason is that I think we should work together in this new relationship which seems to be forming between us now, and try to understand what has happened." "I agree," said Toad. Then he added, "Thank you, Heron." And they shook hands in a serious sort of way.